So this week was a really big learning experience for me because I had not yet heard of symbolic interactionism, and then I had no idea what an emoticon was. And I studied an article about emoticons and symbolic interactionism. And so I learned a lot this week, to say the least. My article I studied was called "A Study of the Role of Internet Emoticons in Business Communication from the Perspective of Symbolic Interactionism." So for those of you who are like me and do not know what an emoticon is, basically it is like a man-made emoji. So we have emojis like you've got the smiley face, the heart, the house, whatever. You have all these emojis that have color and depth to them. And then you have an emoticon, which is a man-made emoji. So think about like taking the semicolon and a parentheses and you make the smiley face, the winky face, or you take that the semicolon and you put a capital D or a capital P, and now you have a really happy face, or you have like a face with the tongue out. So these are these man-made emojis, and so that is essentially what an emoticon is. So now this article talks about using emoticons in business communication and how social interaction, symbolic interactionism plays a role in this. And so the article talks about how it's actually super unprofessional to send emojis in the business world. So when you're sending out business emails and texts and notifications, all these things, emojis are actually super unprofessional, is what the article talks about. And so they said that using emoticons is a great way to bridge that barrier between having emotion and sending your emotion, but also keeping it professional. Symbolic interactionism it's important to understand that, like, this theory explains how people create meaning in social interactions. So you have a conversation with someone and you use emojis sometimes over text to express your emotion with it, but in business world you can't do that. And that's where emoticons come into play, because it's like a tongue twister, but that's where emoticons come into play, because you can't necessarily use emojis to be professional, but if you use emoticons, that message that you're sending can still be perceived as a happy message as you send the smiley face with it. Or if you want to get maybe a more stern or a more sad message across, you can put the frowny face with it, but you don't use an emoji, you use an emoticon. And that's how you can still create meaning in these business interactions without using emojis. You can still send the same message across, but you use emoticons to do it. And so the social side of this is important to understand, because you can still create these meanings in these interactions without using emojis in the business world. And this article talks about the business world like online, like emails, text, like Zoom, whatever, all these things that you're sending interactions via text and online. And so it's not necessarily talking about these face-to-face business, but how business communication online is important, and how can you create meaning through these conversations. And so the answer was using emoticons, and that was crazy to me because I never thought of like emojis being maybe unprofessional, though I don't use them myself a ton. Like, I never thought that was an unprofessional thing in the business world. And so it was a cool thing to learn that how you can still use emotion in the business world without sending an unprofessional message. So that's what I learned about this week. Lots of learning, since I didn't really had never heard of the symbolic interactionism and emoticons, but hopefully you guys were able to learn something too, because I learned a lot this week.